welcome everyone to Topsail Island 411, Beach Class 411. It will be primarily framed around Topsail, simply because that's where I live. That is an actual picture of the Surf Condos, which is the condo complex that I've lived in for 20 years. So not the typical realtor who moves every 5 years. When you find happiness, you just stay there. With that being said, if you guys have taken the class before, the slides are the same. There are a couple of updates that I will mention when we get to them, but it's basically, I know several folks have taken this before, and you can probably always glean some new information out of it just by, maybe you've had an experience now and you're like, oh, that's what they were talking about. So with that being said, the first thing I'm going to touch on before we get into, well, it's actually the first slide. So obviously, whenever you are in a coastal area and many parts of Onslow County, as we learned during Florence, we need to be familiar with flood zones and flood maps. So this is the end all be all best place to go for the flood maps. Don't trust Realist or CSS or GIS. Go to ncfloodmaps.com. This is the most up-to-date, the most accurate, and the one to protect yourself is the one that you want to be using. With that being said, I want to show you, and it might be on this screen. Hang on. It's going to take me 1 second to open it. This is literally information that came out last week. Hang on, bear with me. I got to be able to see. Thank you, John Workman, for putting that in there. But it is the end all be all of flood maps. All right, I had this PDF up and I opened too many windows and now it's not up. So give me 1 second and it will come up. On June 2nd, 2021 in Pender County, there are some new panels that are going to be adapted. And can somebody just reply yes or no? Does everyone see this new Pender County map? Yes, perfect. Okay. So
yes.
This is all of Pender County down here. If you can see where my mouse is, that's going to be Topsail. But I know many of us are being forced to go outside our normal little comfort zone of where we're selling just because we have such a lack of inventory everywhere. So if you are venturing out into Pender County, if you're in Watha, if you're, Rocky Point, some of the areas that maybe is a little bit unfamiliar, please, please, please check these flood maps, because the last thing you want to do is sell somebody a house that isn't in a flood zone where they could get very affordable flood insurance right now. Whereas when this goes into effect on June 2nd, 2021, the zones that are changing, if you are not in a flood zone, flood insurance is probably less than $600 right now. Once it goes into a flood zone, it's probably going to go anywhere from $1,200 to $1,800. Again, please check with an insurance agent. They're also going to be very versed as to what the costs will be. But I wanted to, because this is coming up in literally 90 days, wanted to make everybody aware of the new flood maps. And the board, Heather did confirm earlier, this information literally just came out last week. They're going to be pushing some information out to you guys. But I thought that, since we start with the flood maps and part of Topsail Island is in Pender County, it was a good time for us to go ahead and get that information over to you. So again, ncfloodmaps.com is the one to go, and the FRISNC is literally the next screen. That's what John put in the chat. So if you guys go over to the chat that everyone can see, if you copy that link and put it in your browser and bookmark it, that is going to take you basically to this screen here that you're all looking at, so that you can literally put in an address, put in the county, and start your searches. Probably one of the biggest things that you want to be aware of is a Cobra flood zone. So let's go back to basic flood zones first. First, you may not be in a flood zone at all. If you are not in a flood zone, your mortgage company does not require you to pay flood insurance. If you choose to purchase flood insurance, it is very affordable. Check with your insurance agent. The next level up in price is AE flood zone. That is if you are not direct ocean front, but say maybe still on the beach. That's going to be that next mid-level. I typically see prices somewhere between $1,000 and $3,000, depending on the house and depending on the elevation of the home. And then you have VE. The easiest way to remember the prices, the VE flood zone is very expensive. It's more velocity is what V stands for. But you have a higher chance of, getting actual flood damage because you are typically waterfront in one way or the other, either oceanfront or there are a lot of places in Surf City on the canals that would be VE. There are some places in Sneads Ferry that are also VE or AE. One nice thing about flood insurance is that some insurance companies do let you assume a policy. So if you are selling on the beach, one of the things that you always want to ask the listing agent, and the ones that have very affordable flood insurance that are assumable are pretty good about putting it in the listing. Federal flood insurance assumable policy, $647. Yes, you are correct. It is about $3,000. It depends. There's no one set price for flood insurance. It varies. So if you are not in a flood zone and you are not required to have flood insurance, it should cost you, let's just say, less than $1,000. If you're in an AE flood zone, typically it's going to be between $1,000 and $3,000. If you are in a VE flood zone, you are going to be at least $3,000, and I've seen it go up to $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. So don't just say $3,000 for VE. It starts at $3,000. Okay. But again, always want to check and see if a policy is assumable. The next big thing to worry about with flood zones is a COBRA flood zone. COBRA zone is the Coastal Barrier Resource System, which basically in 1981, they did a flyby. And if there wasn't a dwelling there, then the federal government said, we're not going to back the flood insurance. So you would then have to go to a private insurer to get insurance. The issue is that it is even more expensive. So whereas VE flood insurance is going to run you $3,000 to $8,000, COBRA flood insurance can run you anywhere from, say, $6,000, $7,000. I've seen it all the way up to $12,000, $13,000, $14,000. So, when you're trying to figure out, what somebody's payment's going to be, I can spend $600,000 on my beach house. Well, you need to be mindful of taxes, your flood insurance, your wind and hail insurance, and your hazard insurance. You put those four numbers together, and a lot of times their insurances are even more than their payments are. So then they really may have to adjust what price they're spending on their beach house. So that's where, doing your homework in advance to see, again, some listing agents give more information. I try to put in as much information when I'm listing, especially a single family house. With condos, and we'll get to that in a little bit, 9 times out of 10, their insurances are covered in the HOA because they need a master policy. But when you're doing an individual home, making sure you have information on flood insurance is great. If you're working with military folks, I know a lot of them like to use USAA. I can tell you that I had somebody buy a beach house in November, and longtime USAA clients. And I said to them, please go ahead, get your quote from USAA. I said, but please let me source you a couple of local places, just so you have something to consider. And they were shocked at how much cheaper our local places were than USAA. So if you get one quote and it's super high, please reach out to, more than one. This is definitely an area where you want to get 2 or 3 quotes, because it does vary. The other thing that's also going to vary is what kind of coverages you can get. Please know, regardless of your flood insurance, it is only going to cover you up to $250,000. And flood insurance only kicks in for rising water. So if your roof blows off, that is not going to kick your flood policy in, only if water rises. Again, I'm going to move my head and use the surf condos as an example. the front two buildings that you can see that are closest to the water, we had water come up and knock the air conditioning units off their pedestals. Our flood insurance replaced the AC units for those people because it was rising water. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. Back to Cobra flood zones. There are a lot of areas in North Topsail Beach that are that are considered Cobra flood zones. And then there's also, this is all of Topsail. But this shows, this is actually Serenity Point, but there are actually some places down here that show you that there are some Cobra flood zones in Scotts Hill and Hampstead. Again, I know we're all reaching out and expanding how much area we cover, but make sure you're checking what flood zone they are. I did sell an oceanfront house in Emerald Isle this year, and I was surprised at how inexpensive their flood insurance was. And it's typically because Emerald Isle is literally higher. It sits up higher than Topsail does. So the house prices are more, but the flood insurance is less. So, you know, again, depending on where your customer is looking at, you know, you can play around with the different totals. And in addition to North Topsail, there are also some Cobra flood zones in Sneads Ferry. So you've got Sneads Ferry, North Topsail. I don't personally know of any Cobra flood zones in Surf City or Topsail Beach. I don't believe that they are. And then of course, down in Scotts Hill and Hampstead, there are some more. All righty. You know what, I think I saw Abby Bowen. If you are still on this, can you just type in the chat? Federal flood insurance versus private flood insurance. Obviously, your lender they're going to, you know, make a difference. Okay, good. Abby's still there. Dina was telling me about a lender that did Cobra flood or did a VA loan with a Cobra zone. Do you remember which lender that is? I meant to write it down for the class and I forgot. Do you happen to know?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
No.
All right. I'll try and get, can you text her, Ab, since I'm doing the class, and just see which lender she used? Because I do remember her telling me she got a VA loan to go through with Cobra flood zone. And again, you know, with the amount of limited inventory that we have, it's something that, you know, I mean, we all know we have a lot of VA buyers. So Abby will get back to us on that. We'll put her on that and I'll keep going. So typically, if it is Fannie or Freddie backed mortgage lender, they won't do private flood insurance. They want federal flood insurance available, but we're going to see if we can find another source for you on that. And again, the biggest thing to just remember is just the added cost of, you know, flood insurance, wind and hail insurance, hazard insurance, plus your taxes. It takes that TI part of the PITI in your payment. It can be a considerable amount. So just make sure that you're educating your buyers when you're doing that. All right, let's go into conforming and non-conforming. How many people feel like they know what conforming and non-conforming is? Can you tell by looking, or anybody want to chime in? Unmute yourself.
You're talking about the CAMA setbacks?
Right. I know you know.
Okay.
You don't get to answer, John Workman. All right, Snef, do you know?
I think so, yeah. It's
right.
60 feet from the first vegetation is
First
whether
stable
you're,
line of vegetation. But yeah,
is
60
whether
feet, or the last line of stable vegetation, which is correct. Okay,
Yeah.
so if we look at this picture that we're screen sharing, and if you want, you can just type it in the box. Who thinks this is a conforming lot and who thinks this isn't a conforming lot? Okay, actually it is, and here's why. Do you see this number over here where it says 250? What I think you guys are caught up on is up here, it doesn't look like you have 60 feet and you don't. However, you have a 250-foot lot. So if something happened, depending on the severity, you could actually move this house back. You would have to still be off, I would say at least 20 feet. I think that's going to cover all three of my towns. Some are 10, some are 15, some are 20. You have to be off the road a certain amount, but this lot is deep enough that if something did happen to the dwelling, they could move it back and it would still technically be considered a conforming lot. Now, let's look at this one that is right on the street. This is literally on Topsail. This house is, this is Topsail or South Topsail Drive. What about this one? All you knows, copy and paste. This lot is not conforming because if you look at it, you don't have anywhere to go. If you try to move this house back, see how it's 127-foot line over here? There's nowhere for it to go. You can't move it back into the street and there's nowhere to go. So if this house was more than 51% damaged, they wouldn't be able to get permits to be able to rebuild it. Now, if it's less, if it's not substantially damaged, you know, and we can drive up and down the beach as long as it's habitable. You know, we have a lot of houses right now on Topsail that don't have any dune structure in front and are perfectly fine. You can sell them. You do have to disclose. It is your job as the listing agent to disclose if the lot is non-conforming. Okay. So just make sure that is, and the only people that can tell you if a lot is conforming is CAMA. So if you have a question, there's actually two, and I believe I have a slide for it in a little bit. If not, I'll get the information and Heather can email it out to everybody that was in attendance. Jason Dale used to do all of Topsail, and now he just does the Pender County portion of Topsail. And there's a gentleman, Jessica, I know you're on the class too. If you want to put it in the chat, the gentleman, he's out of Morehead City, if you can find it. So we've got a gentleman out of Morehead City that does Onslow County. So the Onslow portion of Surf City, North Topsail Beach, and you know, anywhere else in Onslow County. And I believe he covers Carteret County too, because he's out of that CAMA office. And then Jason Dale does Surf City South and Topsail Beach. And then of course, down into Scottsdale and Hampstead. Okay, so if your clients want to buy a beach house, if they're living in it as a primary house, obviously that's no problem. If they want to do a second home, most lenders will do between 10 and 20%. This says for investment property, they want 20% minimum. I will tell you that all of the investment properties that I've sold in the last 12 months since COVID have gone up to 25%. Which is just a lender requirement now. So again, that is outdated on the slide, and I apologize, but that changed. We're kind of hoping that, you know, once COVID is over, hopefully that'll go back down. But your folks need to be prepared to, you know, especially if it is a investment property, they're going to want to have to put 25% down, regardless of if it's a condo or a regular home. Again, that would be a lender question, and different lenders are going to have different requirements. I have sold beach houses and beach condos, and when they've been investment situations, my buyers have had to do 25%, but they both use, you know, similar lenders in the Topsail area. So again, that would be more of a lender question, but I always like to under promise and over deliver. So I would tell your buyer, plan on putting 25% down. And if they can get away with 20%, you look better and they can buy more furniture. What about lots on buyers who intend to build? Land loans, that gets a little bit trickier. If it is if it's a land loan, usually you've got to do at least 20% down, sometimes 25. I know Christina Asbury had a couple of ag guys that were a little bit more flexible, but look at it. Here's what I tell people when they're purchasing lots. what does the bank have? Nothing. They have dirt. Until you improve that, it is basically worthless for the bank. And so that's why they're so much stricter. What I've often done with my clients who, if they can pay cash, just pay cash. If they're not in a position to pay cash, they can, sometimes it's easier to refi their personal house and pull a chunk of money out and be able to purchase the land that way. And then Abby just typed in the chat, Lauren Bogers. I'm assuming this is my answer to who did the VA loan with Cobra Flood Zone.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
I'll put
So
her
everybody,
in the chat box as well for anyone who wants it.
say that again.
I can put her contact information in the chat box for anyone who would like it.
Yep. I was just going to say, if you have her cell number and if you have her email, because I know she's with a different company now, go ahead and that's definitely something to hang on. Yes, she used to be with OnQ. So
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll stick it in there.
I appreciate you getting that information. Thank you, my dear.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so again, depending on the down payment is going to be depending on, or the down payment is going to be pretty much dependent on your lender. But especially during, it used to be 10% for a second home, 20% for investment. We are seeing it go up a little bit because of COVID. So just prepare them for that. Vacation rentals. If there is a single rental booked on a property that you are showing, you need to have a vacation rental addendum. You also need to make sure that you are checking the right boxes on there, whether to allow or disallow any more bookings. And this runs through your contract. So it is from, you put the vacation rental addendum in at the time of contract. If your people do not want more rentals, you need to make sure you check that box that they're not allowed to take any more, or if your people do want rentals, you check that there is. And you want to make sure that you get the past years of rental income. I mean, obviously, we all remember Florence. We had a lot of properties that didn't do as well in 2019 because of the storm and they were delayed getting going. In addition, in 2020, we had COVID. So for sure, you want to get the last 3 years. You might even want to ask for the last 5 if they have it, just because the last 2 years were so atypical. You could have a good rental, but because of storm damage or, restrictions on the house, you might not have seen the rental income that it would have had. So I can personally tell you Topsail was ridiculous last year, and I think everybody and their brother was there. So I don't think we had much of a hit on vacation rentals, but there was a period of time when I think it was, when we closed down, like St. Patty's Day last year, when probably about the month of April, like our beach accesses were closed. So that was limiting with being able to get people to come in and do rentals. On the other things to note on the vacation rentals, most companies have a rental agreement with that current owner, and it's typically the whole year. So you also want to check and make sure that you can, like if you want to switch from company A to company B, you want to make sure company A isn't going to, hold your people hostage and you're going to be able to leave. Either side can, your buyer may say, hey, I don't want to take any rentals. And the seller may say, hey, well, until you get through your due diligence period, I still want to take rentals, because what if you cancel the deal? Then I've missed weeks of bookings. So that comes up, and that's something that's also negotiated. Make sure if your folks are going to continue in a vacation rental situation, make sure they're looking at all of the fees, that company A or company B are going to be charging. There's management fees, but they could charge credit card fees. They could charge, other little hidden fees, like for changing out, filters and things like that. So you want to make sure that if you can get the previous owners, you want to see what it nets, but you also want to see what it grosses, and you want to see what all those fees are. Excuse me, so that you can really see how much money this property really does make. The other thing that you really want to try and do is also get maintenance records. You want to, I mean, of course, you're going to recommend a home inspection, but you're going to want to see what kind of maintenance things they're doing. Have they changed the hot water heater out? You know, have they been servicing the air conditioning? Because, you know, those are big ticket items that, you know, if you have a vacation rental and it's booked for, you know, 12 weeks in the summer, you and I both know that they're coming in hot on Saturday afternoon and they're cranking that air conditioning down to 60 and, you know, just wreaking havoc on these systems. So making sure that you get a house that's been well maintained is also very, very, very important. One of the other things that you can do is ask the sellers if it is truly a rental property for them as well. That would be on their Schedule E. For their income taxes, you can ask them to disclose that information. They don't have to, because obviously that's private tax information, but that would really tell you what the property really did make so that you're looking at real numbers. Jessica just put Jason Dale's information in the chat. I don't know how to bookmark on a chat. I don't know if you want to just go into the chat and copy it for yourself, or scroll back up and just write it down. I believe she's also looking for the gentleman's information for the other side. So Jessica, thank you for getting that. Okay. So, whoop, hang on, click the wrong, there we go. Other things to look for if you are listing a property on the beach. Cigar pilings are obviously, it's a cylinder, so it's going to be round. You're going to see those typically shorter. Excuse me. Pardon me. Those pilings are typically on the older beach cottages. I have seen in my years of experience that those houses tend to be, they're either really, really stable because they've been through everything, or you feel like you're walking on a floating dock in some of those houses. So I'm not saying don't sell a house that's on cigar pilings, but just know that it's probably not going to meet the current flood elevation. I think we're, okay, John Workman, you can chime in now. Is current elevation 12.6 in Surf City and 14.6 in North Topsail? I feel like you checked recently.
I really haven't checked recently. I just assumed that it was 14 and a half.
14 and a half. Okay. So even if you use 14 and a half as a rule of thumb, that's a good safe number to use. You can look at some of these old cottages. Well, first of all, if you don't have to walk up any steps to get there, you don't have an elevation. If you're on cigar pilings, you probably aren't up high enough to current standards, but you could be grandfathered in. So that's, you know, another thing to look at. How much vegetation is on the dune? North Topsail, Surf City, Topsail Beach, all lost a ton of dunes during Florence. Topsail Beach is actually already planted. They planted last year. Surf City is doing renourishment. They pushed a lot of sand. They haven't planted anything for us yet. And North Topsail did a beach renourishment prior to Florence, and I do believe that they're working on getting some federal funding to try and continue their activities. But basically, the more vegetation you have out front, the more protection you have for your house. If you have no vegetation out front, it's you fighting the Atlantic Ocean, and who is going to win? Because it's going to be the Atlantic Ocean. So just know that if you don't have dune structure out front, some of the earlier pictures you saw little lines in the sand, those are sand fences. You can try and collect the sand fences to help get protection. You can plant your own sea oats, but just having a single plant in the ground does not extend your line of vegetation. It has to be, the way Jason always explains it is, it has to be lush vegetation, and it has to be, you know, it has to be grown. It can't just be a single sprout in the ground. It actually has to be a good solid growth situation. And the more, you know, the more growth that there is, typically the more stable it is. And then with regards to the heights, there's some of the elevations in Topsail Beach are actually higher than in Surf City. So it just depends. One other thing to old septic tanks on lots. I know that there's been some discussion of that. Most of Surf City, or if not all of Surf City, is on some sort of sewer, whether it's Surf City sewer or whether it's on Wassa if you're in the canals. Most of North Topsail is Plurus, but there are some places that do have septic. There was a building moratorium back in 06 to 09 when they couldn't get enough sewer capacity. So some people did put septics in up there. There is no sewer at all in Topsail Beach. Everything is on a septic system. A lot of those systems do require a maintenance. And a lot of those are done with RSC out of Hampstead. Because you have to have, I know the oceanfront house in Topsail Beach that I sold, it had already had a contract with RSC to maintain the septic. So just know that just because you're in a city per se doesn't necessarily mean you have sewer. Enclosures on the ground floor. If you have more than 299 square feet on your ground level that is finished, that could increase your flood premiums. A lot of times if you're showing houses, you see a really small area downstairs that's enclosed and then you go up to all your living areas. That's so that their flood insurance can be a little bit less expensive. If you do find a structure that's like completely enclosed downstairs, you could have things like breakaway walls, flood vents to try and offset some of the expense. And sometimes they'll cover it, but sometimes they won't. And so you just need to be aware that even though you've got what they're calling living space, excuse me, it may not be insurable. So just make sure that you're doing your due diligence there. We find that a lot on the canals. Well, they'll have 2-story houses and they'll make the bottom floor, you know, a bedroom, a bathroom, so on and so forth. That's all fine and good, but if the canal water rises and that gets flooded, your flood insurance is likely not going to cover it. That would be a question for your insurance. So if you have more than 299 square feet on the bottom level, just make sure that you're asking that question to your insurance person. Is this covered? Is this not covered? Just so that, you know, you're not keeping your, you know, super high priced whatever downstairs that could, you know, get carried off if floodwaters rise. And then I already mentioned about the grandfather policies and seeing if policies are transferable. All right. Next one. Elevation certificates. So most, if a house has flood insurance already, it typically has an elevation certificate. All of the towns are pretty good. Surf City has probably got the most available online with the elevation certificates. North Topsail Beach is not online, but Deb Hill's assistant, Kate, is super great at North Topsail. You can email her, and if she's got the flood elevation certificate, she'll send it straight over to you. And then in Topsail Beach, the ladies, if they have it, they'll send it to you. So the towns are pretty good about being able to help you with flood elevation certificates. Again, some of the listing agents will put it in the listings if you're on the buy side, but if you're on the listing side, ask your seller because they probably have flood insurance, so therefore they're likely going to have a flood elevation certificate. If you're listing a property that doesn't have insurance, like if they've paid the house off and they don't carry flood insurance, get a flood quote, get an insurance quote, because a lot of times they're going to ask you and say, hey, well, what does your seller pay? And if your seller doesn't pay it, that's fine. But, you know, the easier you can make it, well, it used to be the easier you could make it, for the buyer's agent, they would, you know, the happier they would be. With the lack of inventory, you still have to do this as a buyer's agent, but the listing agents aren't putting as much in information wise because, you know, things are selling so quickly, but you still want to check your insurance quotes. Coastal hazard addendum, I always recommend using that. That's in our JBOR forms. There's 4 or 5 different things, whether it's, you know, federal flood, whether it's private flood. Obviously, we're in an area that's susceptible to storms And there are some properties out there that you will see sandbags on. So just, obviously you want to disclose those items to your buyers. And if you're listing it, you want to put it in there as well. A lot of times vacation rentals come furnished. And we all know mortgage lenders don't like personal property in the contract. The proper way to convey furniture or anything else, tchotchkes, dishes, plates, beds, whatever, is on a bill of sale. Typically, it's at no money. You cannot write a bill of sale because you are not an attorney. Most of the bigger companies have one that an attorney has made for them that is able to use. If you can't get your hands on one of those, ask your closing attorney, just to draw you up a quick bill of sale, because you want to make sure that, this $800,000 beach house that you showed is going to, it's going to have, all the furniture in it that you expect to get. The other item is you've got to verify, most of the time the property conveys at nothing, even though yes, furniture has value, but it doesn't. But just make sure that if there's an exclusion list that what the seller's taking, especially like exterior furniture as well. I can remember my literal first transaction on the beach. We thought we were getting the beach chairs and we didn't. So I got to buy beach chairs and they were very expensive. So those are things that you'll want to make sure that everything is spelled out. Just like in a regular contract, FHA, VA that we do all day, you make sure you get everything spelled out. You want to do the same thing in a beach house. We covered, septic permits. With the septic permits, again, that's mostly Topsail Beach. You do have to work through Pender County to get those permits, to have the permit on hand. The thing to worry about in North Topsail is verifying the number of taps through Plurus. So if you're selling an 8-bedroom house, they need to have paid for an 8-bedroom tap, not a 4-bedroom tap. If you verify it with Plurus and it's a 4-bedroom, that's something else you may want to negotiate in your due diligence time period, because technically if it's an 8-bedroom house on a 4-bedroom tap, somebody needs to pay for those extra 4 bedrooms and the taps can get pretty expensive. Jessica also put Brad's information. John Workman put Brad's information in. He does the southern shoreline of North New River to the Surf City town line. So again, I think you've got both of their information for your camera reps. And then Heather stated that the coastal area disclosure has replaced the addendum. Yes, she is 100% correct. But I think I know we added a couple of things to it, but the meat and potatoes are private flood insurance or federal flood insurance, still sandbags, still in an area prone for storms, flooding, hurricanes, etc. So those are in your JBOR forms. You can just look up the coastal area disclosure and take a look at it. We already went over the setbacks. CAMA permits. If you want to build a beach crossover, a deck, anything that could touch a dune, you want to get permission. And that's either going to be from Jason Dale or from Brad Connell, depending on where you are at physically, where your dwelling is. So I can promise you that if you start a crossover and don't have a CAMA permit, they will shut your job down. And if your work isn't how they want it, they will make you tear it down. So just know that, though they are very serious with, they don't make the rules that difficult, but they do want you, following the proper procedures so that you're protecting everyone. Okay, so this is a slide for Jason's information. We have it in the chat so we can we can go on to the next one. But basically, if you want something new, call one of the CAMA guys. If you want to know where the first line of vegetation is, call the CAMA guys. If you need a boat dock, boat ramp, anything within 75 feet of inland water on the mainland also needs a CAMA permit. Here are some good names to have if you want to screenshot that. Todd is not the planner anymore, but that number still takes you to the planning. Deb is still planning for North Topsail. And I am not sure on Frank, but those are definitely the planning numbers for the different towns. So it will get you to where you are. If you have general questions about flood insurance, I definitely think that SFI is probably one of the most knowledgeable companies that's out there. Scott and Michelle Wheeler. I mean, Scott has just, I mean, he's number one at his job. He really is. And their firm is very easy to work with. And even if you don't go with them, they will still absolutely help you with any questions that you may have. This is one of Christina's slide, and it basically says, don't waste your time with lookers with a dream. You want to make sure that your folks are qualified. I mean, especially as hard as this market is right now, you've got to be able to be competitive with your offers, and you know, just school your people. Do you want a beach house or not? Because everybody says that they do, but here's the money that it's going to take to get it. So these are just funnies that she put in. I like those. All right, so off to the other side of beach stuff are condos. So here is a perfect example of sandbags. This is the Topsail Reef Complex, which is, these sandbags have been here since 2005. And if you would have told me in 2005, when I first saw these sandbags, that this complex was still going to be here in 2021, I probably would have bet you money in 05 that you were crazy. But they're still here. And shockingly enough, the damn things are selling for over $100,000 again. And I remember when you could pick a reef up for like $45,000. It was cheaper to buy a reef than it was to buy a car. But they're still out there and they're still kicking. They still have a lot of sandbags. If you can see, they've at least these stairs have worked out better for them, where it's kind of turned. So it's running parallel with the beach. You come out and then it parallels. That seems to have helped them. They haven't had to replace it quite as much. My favorite complex on Topsail Island is the next one, but I could be a little particular because I do happen to live there. That is the Surf Condos. We did get all new roofs. This is just an amazing sunset. We got new roofs after Florence, so our roofs look much better than this. Just to kind of run through the different condos on Topsail. Topsail Reef is at the very north end. There are 240 units. They only have 1 and 2 bedroom units. Owners can have pets. They only have a tennis court for amenities. I'm going to do St. Regis and Villa Cap together. Both of those currently have liens. And I haven't been able to find anyone to finance at either complex, with the exception of, I did see one state employee credit union loan go through at Villa Capriani. I did talk with the listing agent, and she said that the attorney did have to do one more disclosure amendment, something additional to the contract, basically letting all parties know that there was still a lien, and that if anything came from the lien with regards to money, that it would be on the new buyer. But there are currently liens against St. Regis and Villa Capriani because of Florence. Shipwatch has 2 and 3 bedroom units. Topsail Dunes has 1, 2, and 3. St. Moritz, you cannot do vacation rentals there. It's only owner occupied or long-term rentals. And then surf condos are 1 and 2 bedrooms. And you can see the owner pets. Surf condos is no longer self-managed. It's actually managed by CCMC, but that's likely to change. And the surf condos are VA approved because I couldn't believe when I started living there that it wasn't. So I did that years ago. Trying to think, those are pretty much all of them. You can either put questions that you have in the chat, or if there's any general questions. Usually when we're in a live setting, people are asking questions as they go. Are the units good for Airbnb? I don't, because all of the restrictive covenants were written before Airbnb was even a thing. I have not seen any amendments. I can personally speak. I know at surf condos, you can do Airbnb because several of the owners do. So just know that you would, currently, it does appear that most of these complexes are approved for Airbnb because they haven't figured out a way to exclude those types of rentals. Melanie said, what makes units in the Reef eligible for VA versus some? Basically, they didn't finish the process years ago when they were going through it. So the VA only approved certain buildings. And I would say back in like 07, 08, 09, I didn't have any problem with VA loans going through any of the buildings. Because all 8 aren't approved, some lenders will go through and dig and figure out which ones are approved, some won't. So that's why I have some VA approval, because it's really lender specific as to whether they're going to cover it or not. Okay, on the villa, they have 2 different liens. One lien is settled for the roof. The property claim, there is still a lien to my knowledge. I know everybody's been working on it to try and get it situated, but as far as I know, there is still that other lien. So yes, at St. Moritz, and I'm sorry, not St. Moritz, at St. Regis and at Villa Capriani, it has been all cash deals, with the exception of, I did see one go through. If you pull the closed sales, it was, I know Amy Baker had the listing. I can't remember if she also had the buyer, but it absolutely was a loan, and it was through State Employees Credit Union. And if you think about it, the reason why the credit unions tend to not sell their loans, they keep it in-house. So it was probably a risk that they were willing to take, even though the property had a lien on it. So what does it mean that the roof lien is done? Okay, so there were 2 different liens on the Villa Capriani HOA. One was because of their roofs, and then the other one was a property claim. So it's basically if you had a first mortgage and a second mortgage. So one mortgage is paid off, one mortgage is in. You can kind of think of it that way. But the Villa Capriani is not free of all liens. They still have a lien, but the roof lien is settled. The property is still not.
I had a listing agent tell me that the liens were taken care of prior to Christmas time, and that's why I wanted you to go back over it, because I didn't think they were taken care of yet.
No,
Well,
I have.
both of them, definitely the
The
one.
roof is definitely done, but the other one isn't. I know it's in discussion, but it's not done. I've got either Amy or Biz sent me something from Villa. So are you working on a listing in there, or you've got buyers for there?
I've got buyers, lots of buyers.
Send me an email so I don't forget, and I'll forward you what Biz and Amy sent me about Villa, and I'll get it over to you just so you can read it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Oh, it's
And
my
I have a
pleasure.
question.
Please.
So, and it's got nothing to do with liens. It's more along the lines of FEMA relief. Is there anything in the works that would allow our buyers who want to buy on the beach to know if the current owners have already gotten FEMA relief? I know that, I think that we had a couple of weeks ago, we had training on that, and that doesn't seem necessarily fair that they get, cash out, but if something happens again and they've already gotten FEMA relief once, they're not able to get it again. Is that correct?
I honestly don't know the answer to that because I've not run into it. I have run into issues with flood claims where, they've had multiple flood claims and then you can't get insurance or your insurance is so much more because the property has had so many, 123 Main Street has had 5 flood claims and now, whereas 127 didn't have any, their flood insurance is X, but yours is 10 times X because of all of these claims.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I would think that I would rather you ask that question to a flood insurance person because I feel like they're going to have better information for you on that situation. Because with the federal government, giving like, is it the address or is it the person? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
That's what I would say there. So who else has questions? You can either put them in the chat or if you want to unmute yourself and ask. We've got, usually the class goes an hour and 10 minutes, depending on questions. So, it's only 12:52, so I'm happy to take questions for the next 8 minutes. If you guys don't have any questions, we can always end early. But I wanted to at least give an opportunity for some questions. The lien at the St. Regis is with Cat 5, who was the contractor that did the work at Florence. And of course, it was just a disagreement of, they were charged X by Cat 5 and the insurance only covered, a portion of it. But Cat 5, I don't know what the numbers are. I'm just going to use, these are example numbers. Let's say Cat 5 says, I spent $3 million repairing your complex and your insurance only paid me $2 million. I need that other $1 million. And, St. Regis is fighting with them saying, no, my insurance paid you $2 million. You should have done it for $2 million. So what the specifics of the lien is, I don't know, but it's a dispute over what work was done and what was paid. So, but that is definitely something you can specifically ask the listing agent, what lien information do they have? Say again about septic versus sewer for the 3 townships. Okay. And again, 95% sure all of Topsail Beach is septic. Surf City, to my knowledge, is all sewer through the town of Surf City, with the exception of Broadway North. From Broadway to the town line north is going to be on Wassa because that's Onslow County. And then North Topsail Beach should be on Wassa for water, but Plurus for sewer. But there are some places in North Topsail Beach that are on septics. Hopefully that answered. Anybody else have any other questions?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I have a client who found the property, the beach property in Raleigh. And
Okay.
because they have it on the MLS on Raleigh, they are not required to give you any information at all. Like if it's a COBRA zone, income, who's managing the information,
They still have to
actual
disclose
condo.
it.
So what do you do? Like, who do you go to if they're refusing to disclose that information?
Well,
Well, I know the property is on
trying-
a COBRA. Go ahead,
Well,
I'm sorry.
Well, what I would say is search the address in our MLS and see if it was ever listed before. So see what kind of self-information you can get. It looks like Brianna Cheshire knows which property you're referring to. And
Yeah, I showed
she has
that
a lot
property.
of
I had
info
that
on
same
it.
issue.
So
Well-
maybe Brianna can get up with it. Christina, you're talking, right? You were asking the question, Christina Sullivan?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Right.
The problem is
maybe-
that he won't share
Correct.
anything. The seller will not share. I asked him to share the seller disclosure. He said no.
Right.
and nothing. Who's managing the property? He will not disclose it. This is
How are
what
you
he says
supposed
to
to
me.
write
That,
an offer? You need this information to write an offer. You
well,
need this, you need the management information to put in the vacation rental. They have to give you the
Yes.
seller disclosure as part of the contract.
no, me, I don't know if the other girl had the same with the seller and agent, and then he said, "Why are you giving me such a hard time?" And so he's just not being helpful at all. And I
That's
showed
crazy.
the property, but obviously my client doesn't move forward until we get these things. So
Right.
I already talked to Zill. I mean, I don't know. How do you go? Where do you go from there?
You contact the broker in charge.
Yeah, I would contact the broker in charge at that agency and see if you get anywhere. Brianna or Abby, did you guys run into the same roadblock? Christine, you might as well share the address to see if we're talking about the same one.
Yeah, let me pull it up.
I called him.
2342.
22 New River Inlet Road.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Abby,
So-
you're the same?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the guy that is actually listed it now, I did some research. It looks like he owns an insurance company and he has his own like little boutique firm. So
Yes.
I had to find out a lot. I actually showed this before he had it about a year or two ago, and it stayed on the market forever just because of like the location and it being in a Cobra zone, a lot of other things like that were wrong with the property. But I tried to get that information as well, and he just stopped responding to me.
Christina, it sounds like you,
Yeah,
even if your buyer is interested, if it is this hard to get information from the get-go, think
Yeah.
of how hard the negotiating is going to be. Think of how hard the repairs are going to be.
Mhm.
And what's the address?
It's-
2342 New River Inlet #1.
Yeah, it's fallen into the water. I don't even
Yeah.
have to pull this up.
Yes.
You do not want to buy this.
That one I showed in the middle of a storm, like just a
Oh, God,
rainstorm.
no.
Yeah, and the tide
Christina,
had come
no.
up to
You just
the
took a class.
porch.
This lot is not conforming. Do not sell this house. No,
I know.
no,
That's what
no.
I told my. So
Danger
listen,
Will
my-
Robinson. Danger Will Robinson.
So
Do
my
not sell this
client,
house. I will kick you out of my beach class if you sell this house.
no, don't worry. Listen.
Okay.
I'm trying to do everything I can. Because I said to him, I am literally. I don't know if you guys have looked at the property. Actually, the lines on the GIS. And this guy, when I call all his lies, he was like, "Why are you giving me such a hard time? I've been doing
Yeah,
this for
no.
30 years."
No, I don't care how many years no, do not sell this house. No,
Sounds like the agent's trying to find another sucker from Raleigh to just
right,
buy the place sight
exactly.
unseen.
Let them sell it to some sucker in Raleigh. John is right. You don't need to
Yeah.
sell this
I
house.
mean, I called him and he answered immediately, but I will say he was not the easiest to deal with, but he definitely, like, I have the residential property disclosure, the MOG, a couple random addendums in there, and then like the actual MLS fact sheet, but he wouldn't send me the vacation rental history.
Yeah,
So-
you don't.
Yeah.
He was difficult. Luckily my buyers listen to me and they know not to purchase anywhere near the sandbags. So
Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't want to deal with somebody down here that actually.
No,
knows
he's
what we're
looking,
talking
Well,
about.
Christina, he's
it's
looking for
so
a sucker.
irritating because I couldn't even find it in the MLS, and I reached out to Dina and I'm like, I need help with this. I can't find it anywhere. Zillow says it's active, and then I did further research. I'm like, all right, I'm calling this person and seeing. So
So I know so my son used to be a realtor in Raleigh, and I know about this company. I'm not going to talk about it, but it's not a very reputable company. I'm just telling you guys, it's kind of, but they make a lot of money.
just read the
my-
reviews. That's all I gotta
Yes.
say. Read the Zillow reviews.
Yes, all of them.
Okay, well, thank you.
My pleasure. Does anybody else have any questions? All right, well, if we don't have any more questions, I really appreciate everyone's time today. I hope you got some good little tidbits. If nothing else, it hopefully was a
Hello?
good review. If you've heard it before, go ahead.
I'm doing,
I'm sorry, say it again. I couldn't tell who was talking. All right, well, again, thank you everybody that attended. I appreciate all of your time. And if you guys need me for anything, I will, I'll type my phone number real quick. That is my phone number, and it's Jenna Morton at, if I could type, Seacoast Real, really can't type on this thing. Should have had Jessica do it. My cell phone and my email are in the chat. Most of you know how to get a hold of me. You can always call Heather at the board if you need it, or you can just look up, you know, in the MLS. It's got my phone number and my email in there. If you guys have any questions, if you think of something after the fact that you're like, oh, I wish I would have asked that, just send me an email, give me a call, shoot me a text. Abby Zenith will tell you that I'm always available and happy to answer any and all questions. I don't care what company you work for. If you need my help, I'm going to help you. So with that, have an amazing afternoon, and we will call it good for now.
Bye.
Thank
Everybody
you.
being here.
All right.
Bye.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.